Here, one of the silly things is, would you be willing to wear a life jacket? Here's the equipment. This is the Secchi disc everybody has.
Okay.
And this is where we put the fish hawk. And I don't use this anymore. This is the traditional thermometer that we tossed in, that we all the Secchi disc volunteers have something like that. The Secchi disc is water clarity. It could be algae, it could be mud, it could be anything. Any kind of debris in the water column. And there's a big creek over there. There's a tremendous weed field over there. Because I don't trust myself, I hooked this onto the boat. The temperature today is 22 degrees Celsius. It's been very interesting because after the big rains, the water clarity went down tremendously. I mean, you couldn't see, I didn't come out here, but there were days where you couldn't see 2 feet under the lake. The lake was completely muddy with all this drainage. You take this thing and you put it in the water. You let it down until you can't see it anymore. So you just kind of, what you want to do is have the sun at your back. And if it's not rippling in the lake, it makes it easier, but you kind of get used to it. So I can still see it. I'd say it's 6.5 meters. It's disappeared. Now I'm going to roll it back. Now I can see it again at 620. Reading is it disappeared at 650 and it reappeared at 620.
Okay.
So the Secchi disc reading is halfway in between that. So you record both of those numbers and it comes out as 6.35. That's more than it was the last time I did it. Last Thursday it was 5.9. So the water's a little clearer. Now the next thing is we gotta go out deeper. The thermocline's been at about 15 meters, which I think is very interesting. Where the thermocline is, if you measure a meter deeper or a meter more shallow, you get very, very different reading because that's what the thermocline is. The temperature changes a lot for just a few feet difference. A couple of meters difference makes a big difference in temperature. The sea slap, which does terrific work monitoring chemistry in the lake, they do their temperature reading at 15 meters. And so you could see that single 15 meter temperature reading has a tremendous amount of margin of error, because if the thermocline is kind of right around there at 15 meters, if they're at 15 meters and 2 feet, it's going to be different than if they're at 15 meters minus 2 feet. This data that we collect, which gets the temperature all the way down the column, right through the thermocline, is more demonstrative of what the temperature is really in the lake than you would get from a single reading at 15 meters. Water layers out by temperature, and the thermocline is where it sort of splits between the hot water above and the cold water below. When I say hot, it's warm, which means this time of year it's in, like, say, 70, and the cold water below is like 60.
Okay, and what does that tell us about the health of the lake?
If the thermocline is very deep, that means that the lake is a lot warmer on the surface. In the summertime, when the lake heats up from the surface, and warmer water is lighter than colder water, so the warm water gets on the surface, but down deep in the lake, the water is cold because it's cold from the winter, and it turns out the water has this funny property, which at 39 degrees it's the most dense. So if you go to the bottom of the lake, if you just considered the lake just was really still and there wasn't any wind, anything stirring it up, then the temperature would fractionate itself out so that at the bottom it would be 39 degrees. And that's the way it is in the winter, and that's the way it is in the summer too, because that's still the heaviest water, and our lake is deep enough so that there's water down there that's 39 degrees. The water is kind of opposite. In the winter, the warmer water is down low and the colder water is on the surface.
And then
in the summer it's the opposite.
Right.
That's right. It's very interesting, and the questions that people ask that are hard to answer is, what is the effect of the change in temperature, and what can you do about it? Obviously, what you can do about it is very difficult, very problematic. But I think like where the fish live is definitely determined by the temperature profile. Lake trout like it at 50 degrees. So what would it mean if, because our lake warms up a little bit and they evolve so that the lake trout live at 55 degrees, what difference would that make? I don't know. Or if they live deeper, what would that make? I don't know about that either. So again, we're going to hook this onto the boat. This is a 50-meter tape, so it's 164 feet. See, it says 50 meters. That's 164 feet. And this is the device. You just put it in the water just to get it sort of used to what the temperature is. And now this device, it has sensors here that measure the pressure that it's feeling and the temperature that it's feeling.
Okay.
And it reinterprets the pressure to mean depth. So then you push the button here, it's like an on switch, and then it's flashing ready. When it flashes ready, then you can put it in the water.
Okay.
And then you let it go. Pressure that it feels, it reinterprets for us as depth. Because the deeper you go, you have more water sitting on you. And people don't think about this too much, but water is really heavy. If you go down 30 feet, 33 feet of water has as much pressure as the whole atmosphere. So atmospheric, 33 feet is one atmosphere. So if you go down 100 feet, that's 3 times atmospheric pressure. Now I've let out 50 meters, but the device may not get that far because, see, now you see it's in an angle because the boat drifted. The Watershed, we've been doing this for 2 years, but John Halfman at Hobart William Smith, he's been doing it for 20 years, and Bruce Gilman probably has done it for 30 years. So there is data going back at least, and then there's data from before that too. There are others have done it. The main thing that's different now is the technology is much more citizen friendly. Incredible. So now the device is here in the boat. Now the great thing about this is, see, now you push view, it's 22.6 on the surface. So remember before we got 22? So the device is saying 22.6. That's close enough, okay?
Yep.
And now it says 22.6 at 1, 22.6 at 3 meters. So already at 10 feet it's still, so now it's 22.0, 22.0, 21.9, 21.9. Watch this is important to watch. 21.5 at 12, 19.1 at 13, 17 at 14. See, it's changing now, and 15 at 15. So it's gone down 9 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit between over the last 2-3 meters. And that's the thermocline. And now at 16 is 13, and then 11.2. It's still getting colder. Now at 20 meters, it's 9.5. So that's already 10 degrees Celsius is 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
So it's a lot colder.
So it's a lot colder, right? So here we are at 20 meters, which is maybe 65 feet. That's where you're going to find the lake trout. And so that's much colder down there. And now you see it's 8.6 at 22. And now what you're going to see is the temperature doesn't change very much. 7.3 at 25, 7.0 at 26. So now the little guy says max. So even though we let out 50 meters of tape, the machine only got down to 48 meters because of the drift of the boat.
Okay.
So it's 5.1 degrees Celsius, which is about 41 degrees Fahrenheit.
Do you think you'll find any sort of correlation with getting this data with any HABs, harmful algal bloom?
That's a great question, Sammy, and I think the answer isn't in yet. I don't think so. I think that we all feel as if what you need for HABs bloom is to have it be warm and still, just simply because the wind just blows the stuff away. One of the things is, I think that certainly the surface temperature is less this August than it was last August. I haven't looked at the data enough to know whether on average, these cooler days that we've had the last week or so is going to affect the overall yearly average compared to last year. So we don't know whether it's going to prove to be cooler down to depth, and then we certainly don't know how that affects the algae bloom. I think the lake is very complicated. A lot of different things that affect what happens in the lake, and it's possible that there are things that we don't even measure. It's actually likely that there are things that we're not measuring because we don't know about them that also affect it. So.